Hello, everyone, and welcome to the QT2 Systems 2024 Ironman World Championship Kona course preview and pre-race tips. Our presenter this evening is Coach Molly Zahr. Molly has been a coach with QT2 Systems since 2009. She has finished more than 20 Ironman races over the years and has raced in Kona 6 times, and including 2 top 10 age group finishes. So Molly's in a great place to be able to go through the course this evening. She's also coached several athletes for this race. So I'd like to welcome Molly. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Reem. And thanks everybody for being here. And we are going to discuss tips for racing in Kona and a course preview. So this is just a lot of what Reem just said. I've done 27 Ironmans over the last 20 years, coached over 100 athletes to Ironman finishes. And yeah, just a lot of racing experience. All right, so a presentation overview. We are going to discuss the QT2 Systems 5 Cornerstones, the final weeks before the race, which we are in now, obviously, the pre-race and check-in logistics, and the day before and race morning, the actual course preview, and then race day pacing and fueling. And our 5 cornerstones, as always, are training, restoration day to day, nutrition, fueling, pacing, and mental fitness. All right, so final week's training and pacing. Obviously, we are in that now. You've got your taper, which is probably hitting for most people, but maybe a little bit later. You've got your final race-specific sessions or your easy sessions. You want to try to simulate the race conditions and intensities as much as possible. In this case, if possible, swim in the ocean. Obviously, that's not feasible for everybody, but if you can get into the ocean or your pool without a wetsuit, obviously this will be a non-wetsuit swim, so you want to be comfortable swimming without a wetsuit. Riding on a trainer in a steady state or outside in the wind, and consider overdressing for your run workouts, especially for people who live in colder climates. Be prepared for hot and humid and windy weather, potential for some rain as well. Heat acclimation, definitely important for this race. If you can possibly do that, 1 workout per day, and or get into a sauna if you can. That can help. You don't want to do all of your training heat acclimated. You don't want all your training to be kind of suffering through that. But if you can get 1 workout per day, that is more than enough. Train on the course if you have the opportunity to actually get out there a little bit early, especially the swim and the ride to and from Javi. If you want to get into the water, into the ocean. And of course, dress rehearsal, ride and run and test your gear. Train your race targets. You're not trying to keep up with other people. Stay out of those group workouts for now. Follow your heart rates, your perceived exertion, your pace, your power, have those numbers really dialed in. In the final weeks, there are no fitness gains, so don't try to kill these workouts. Focus on frequency and feel. Don't overtrain or panic train. Definitely get your recovery in, and it is more important to be rested. It is more important to be rested than to be sharp. You want to make sure that if you're feeling a little off, take that extra rest. Don't try to kill it in an extra workout, and include some days off to make sure that you're nice and rested. The final weeks, your nutrition. You want to make sure that you're staying hydrated, half your body weight, in addition to what you're losing during workouts. Nutrient density is very important. Make sure you're getting 4 servings of each of fruits and vegetables. Your replenishment meals day prior to long run, high in carbs, low in fat. Make sleep a priority. This is huge, and don't overlook this. Make sure that you are getting the sleep that you need. Take anti-inflammatory measures, omega-3s, your hydration, reduce stress, and get that extra sleep. Taper down your caffeine, target less than 800 milligrams a week. And do not forget to drink your recovery drinks after your workouts. It's just a small thing that makes a big difference, so don't skip that. Your race week, when we get to race week, your nutrition, eat a relatively normal diet during race week. Start adding extra salt to your meals since this is a very hot race and you're going to be sweating out a lot. Hydration is a focus. Drink plenty of fluid, sports drink or water for the days leading up to the race, in addition to what's lost from workouts. Continue to taper down your caffeine intake with none on the day prior to race day. Fat load 5 days prior. That's something that not a lot of people necessarily know about, but for a Saturday race, this would be Monday night. You have some sort of fat heavy meal, whether it's a burger and fries, nachos or something fat heavy, whatever, pizza, something like that. Taper your fat and fiber consumption in the final days before the race to make sure that your digestive system is clear of that. Carb load 2 nights before and breakfast the day before, and then continue to make sleep a priority, 8+ hours per night if possible, and stay off your feet as much as possible, which is that's a challenge in Kona, especially everybody's walking around doing stuff, but really try to make sure that you're staying off your feet. Fuel in accordance with your plan during every session. This is important to train your gut. Use the products you plan to use on race day. Like I said, train your gut, use your recovery drinks. And on race day, fueling may be the most important and most likely limiter on performance, and one that you have complete control over. So do not, don't overlook that. Make sure that you are practicing that as much as possible. Mental fitness in the final weeks. Reduce external pressures as best you can. I know this is hard for everybody's got outside work and all that kind of stuff, but try to kind of take stuff off your plate as much as you can. Focus on what you can control, your attitude, your fueling. Trust your preparation. Everybody, I'm sure, has worked very hard to get where they are at this point. So just put a lot of trust in that. Begin your visualization. What does a great performance look like? How will you respond if something goes differently? Because we all know Ironman's a very long day. It's usually something goes wrong, but you just have to figure out how to handle it and adapt and move forward. List your goals and your targets, and remember that your goals you have 100% control over. Your targets are numbers based, and then internalize the race specific workout feels. Know what certain effort levels feel like. So on race day, you're paying attention to that, and then enjoy the feeling of extraordinary fitness. Be grateful. Like I said, everybody's worked really hard to be where they are right now, and it feels really good to be this fit. So enjoy that feeling, and be grateful that you're getting to the start line healthy. All right, what to expect in Hawaii. Hawaii is a little bit different if you have not been before. It's a really amazing place, and you're really going to enjoy it, but there's definitely some differences compared to other places you've raced, whether in the US or other parts of the world. First, obviously, it is hot and humid, so really, just expect to be very warm all the time. You don't even need a sweatshirt at night or anything. Everything on the island is more expensive than you're used to. Consider bringing certain food items with you. This is a big one. There's a little bit of sticker shock the first time you go to the grocery store. Just even the most basic things are often like twice as much as you are used to paying at home, whether it's, oatmeal, yogurt, fruit, you name it. All that stuff is probably going to be very expensive. So pay attention to that and just kind of be prepared for that. And also remember, it is an island, so everything gets shipped from different places. So if you have things that that you need on race day and it's possible for you to bring it with you, think about bringing it with you. I bring my applesauce with me because I can probably get it there, but if it's not on the shelf a week before the race when I get there, it might not be restocked by the time it's time for the race. So bring those things, any really important stuff with you. Island time is a little bit slower. Be patient. Like when you go to restaurants and stuff like that, sometimes it's a little bit slower. Just, again, enjoy the scenery, enjoy being there. Don't get too impatient with people. If you're coming from the mainland US, I always tell people not to try to adjust to the time too much, because you're all kind of traveling from east to west. It tends to be a little bit easier on you because you're waking up earlier, and you're able to go to bed earlier, and I think that just makes race day a lot easier. So don't start staying up until 9 o'clock at night, because race day you got to get up at probably 3, maybe 4 in the morning at the latest, and it's just so much easier if you're used to, you haven't fully adjusted to that Hawaii schedule. You can save that for afterwards. Remember, the course is still a busy highway, so be careful in your training. It's an decent place to ride. There's a decent shoulder, but you absolutely want to be careful because there's always going to be a lot of traffic, and it's yeah, just be careful. Obviously be respectful always. This community's been hosting this event for 40 years. Be gracious guests. You know, we hear all the time about locals getting not too happy with athletes. So let's make sure that we do everything that we can to respect the community and let them keep asking us to come back. All right, so before the race, you want to review the athlete guide and the race details, get your bike tuned up, make all your lists of everything that you need, purchase all your items, make sure you have the right goggles. You definitely probably want some tinted goggles. Make sure all your batteries are charged and ready to go. Obviously pack, confirm all your reservations, and then plan on when you're going to be checking in for the race, whether Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. When you're going to attend the pre-race briefing, and make sure that you know when bike and run gear check-in is on Friday. This is just some additional race week events. Again, some stuff that doesn't necessarily happen in other venues. There is a week before, there is the Hoka Kona Town Fun Run, which is just, I mean, it's a little 5K race downtown. It's kind of fun to go do that. It's not, you know, it's a low-key race, fun little event. The Huala Training Swim, that is on Sunday, and that is basically, it's the Ironman swim course. It's slightly different. You just finish on the opposite side of the pier as opposed to where you'll come out on race day. But it's if you are there, it's a great way to get out. And I mean, you can swim the course absolutely any day, no matter what, but it's kind of a good way to get out with other athletes to kind of simulate race conditions. That does require registration. Then there's a kids race on Tuesday the 22nd. There is the Parade of Nations. That's another kind of big thing that's been around for a long time, and kind of a cool thing to participate in with all the other athletes from all different countries. And that's also on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Then the welcome banquet, which is going to be on Thursday the 24th at 6 p.m. And the athlete race briefing, the English version of the athlete race briefing, I should say, is going to be after that at approximately 8 p.m. Although that will be available online later. If you don't want to stay out that late, or you don't go to that event. And then the Banquet of Champions, or the awards dinner, is going to be Sunday night at 6. All right, race check-in logistics. There is the expo, which typically opens on Tuesday night after the Parade of Nations. Then the athlete check-in is going to be at the King Kamehameha Kona Beach Hotel. That's where a lot of the stuff is. That's where the race start is. That's where the pier is. And those check-in times are Tuesday and Wednesday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then Thursday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And please note, there is no Friday pickup. You cannot pick up your race stuff on Friday, the day before the race. You must get it at least by Thursday at 2 p.m. You want to bring your registration QR code. They're going to send you an email with that, or you can log into your active email or account, and that will come up. And you need a photo ID as well, so make sure that you have those things ready. Get to the expo early and limit your time there. It's a really great expo. It's much bigger than what you're used to in most other venues, and they usually have a lot of like interviews and presentations and stuff there. But you know, try not to get too swept up and wanting to hang out there, because it's totally exposed. It's very hot. You don't want to be walking around all day. Then the mandatory athlete briefings. There are several in several different languages. You'll have to check the race guide to see the other ones, but the English speaking one is at 8 o'clock following the athlete welcome dinner. But like I said, it will be available online afterwards if you don't want to stick around for that. Your race packet's going to include your race bib. It's actually going to include 2 race bibs. You do not need to wear it on the bike. You just need it for the run. Usually they give you 2 these days, so that you have one that you use for the race and one just to commemorate and keep forever. You got your stickers that are going to go on your bike frame and your stem, your helmet, and all of your gear bags. You're going to get a swim cap. They're all going to be different colors depending on what your age group is. It's all so you're going to be going off in waves. Going to get a bike checkout ticket for if someone is going to be checking out your bike besides yourself. If you're going to check out your bike yourself, you do not need that. your wristband, and then your 5 gear bags, your morning clothes, your bike gear, bike personal needs, run gear, and run personal needs. Gear bags, you will not have access to these on race morning. That's a big difference from other races where usually you can go in and like add nutrition or, you know, just double check everything. You do not have access to those. Once you turn those in on Friday, they are totally out of your possession. I think if you really need to, you may be able to find a volunteer to track it down and they escort you through, but I would not count on that. And, you know, so make sure that you do everything you need to do with those bags on Friday when you drop them off. The bags you see kind of in that icon there, they're doing it a little bit different this year. Instead of like the clear plastic, some of your gear bags are actually going to be kind of this nylon. So your morning clothes bag is going to be a gray nylon bag. And that's everything that you want immediately post race and what you wear in the AM. So like on the way in, that's going to have your swim skin if you have that, and your goggles and your cap and any pre-race nutrition or anything. And then you swap it out for, you know, whatever you're going to wear after the race, like it, you know, change of clothes or a recovery drink, whatever you want to be able to pick up right after the finish line. So you're going to drop those off race morning near the swim start, and then you can pick it up after you cross the finish line. That bag you can pick up. You don't have to wait till 7 p.m. to pick that up. You can pick that up whenever it is you happen to cross the finish line. Then your bike gear bag, that's going to be a blue mesh bag. You know, in there, that's going to be anything you need for the bike: your helmet, your shoes, your socks, your sunglasses, nutrition not on the bike, sunscreen, you know, any bike clothing that you may need. I believe you can clip your shoes into your bike if that's the way you prefer to do it, but you can put your bike shoes in that bag too. Your bike gets dropped off at bike check-in on Friday, and your swim gear goes in it after the bike, and then you pick it up with the bike after the race. Then your bike personal needs, again, this is something that you don't need to use, but if you would like to use it, that's going to be a green plastic bag, and that's where you put any extra nutrition. At this particular race, they say that they do not suggest any they do not accept any non-food items. So I know sometimes people like to put maybe spare tubes or, you know, here you wouldn't put a jacket in, but in other races you might, you know, anything like that is not accepted at this race. You really want to use that just for nutrition, because you will not get that back if you don't use it. And that gets dropped off race morning. It's like one of the first things you do as you enter transition between 4:30 and 6 a.m. in the parking lot. And then your run gear bag, that's going to be a red mesh bag. And that's going to have your race belt and your number and your run shoes, socks, sunscreen, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. Headlamp, if you think you're going to be out there in the dark, not a bad idea. That gets dropped off as well at Bike Chicken on Friday. And your bike gear goes in that after you finish the bike, and then you pick it up with the bike after the race. And then your run personal needs bag, that's going to be a yellow plastic bag. And again, same thing. If only non-food items are accepted this race, so don't think you're going to put like socks or backup shoes or anything like that in there. They really only want you to be bringing in food or nutrition. All right, day before final checks, you know, do your final shakeout runs, you know, run, bike, swim Thursday or Friday, charge your electronics, set out your race gear, make sure that you have absolutely everything, you know, all ready to go. And then confirm your race morning logistics and finalize your plans for getting to the starting line, especially if you're staying out of town, figuring out what time you're going to go in, where you're going to park, shuttle buses, all that kind of stuff. Make sure that you go to bed early, set more than one alarm. I think that usually takes a little stress off too, and keep your feet up as much as you possibly can. Race morning nutrition, again, stick with what you're used to. I mean, QT2, we kind of have a standard breakfast. I've been eating it for breakfast before every Ironman for like 15 years, but stick with what you are used to and have practiced. And make sure that you're getting simple carbohydrates and your fluid and your electrolytes and small amount of protein, and sip on sports drink till the race start, and then a gel 15 to 20 minutes prior to race start. Parking and transportation, there are athlete and spectator shuttles. There's going to be like a spectator plan, and there's going to be some parking maps that are going to show you where you need to go if you are driving into town from outside of the race. Obviously not an issue if you're staying close enough to town to walk, but make sure you get that all figured out before the race. Apply sunscreen before you head to the race. This is huge. The Hawaiian sun is extremely hot and extremely intense. You really want to make sure that you are covered in sunblock at every possible time that sunblock is offered to you. So make sure that you have that on before the race. Transition is open from 4:30 to 6:15 a.m. You're going to drop off your personal needs bags first. At this race, you get tattoos for your numbers, and they are not optional. They want you to put those on. They're going to check that you have those on. So make sure that you do that before you get to the race on race day. If for some reason you lose them or you kind of mess them up putting them on yourself, they are going to have people there to fix those for you before you actually go into transition, but they're going to check that out. Review the transition layout, make sure you know where your bike is, add your bottles to the bike, check your tire pressure. There's going to be lots of pumps available. I know a lot of times people want to have their bike pumps, but if you didn't lug your bike pump all the way from, Texas or Minnesota or wherever the heck you're coming from, there are so many bike pumps and so many volunteers. Don't worry about that. You're going to be able to pump up your tires on race morning. There's plenty of porta potties. You're going to be able to use those. Transition only flows one way in and out, and it's a very long way to go in and out. So make sure you try and do everything in one pass through. And then, drop off your morning clothes bag and then get to your swim corral with your swim wave. They want you in those dark corrals 20 minutes before your wave goes off. Try and be very good about that because they are paying attention. And 20 minutes, time moves fast at race morning. So just make sure you're all ready for that. And this is just your map of transition. So you can kind of see the arrows following. It all flows kind of counterclockwise, starting behind the hotel. So you're going to start way behind the hotel and walk through there to drop off your special needs bags and go through body marking, and then finally come out the other side, and you can go through to where your bike is and everything else. And then you come out the opposite side down by the swim entrance and walk around to your corral. So the swim start, it is an in-water swim start, and T1 and T2 and finish right. It's all right on the pier. It's all centrally located. The swim is clockwise, one loop, long rectangle. Bike is one loop. Mostly good road conditions. The run is out and back on Ali'i Drive, and then another out and back for the most part out on the Queen K into the Energy Lab. All right, here are your swim waves. This is important to pay attention to so you know kind of when you're starting. Most of them are a single age group, but some age groups are combined. So just be kind of aware of that. And they're also, the timing between the waves is not always exactly the same. You've got a couple that are going to be 5 minutes apart, but then some of them are going to be 10 minutes apart. So just, again, be aware of that. And these, because it's divided by age group and because it's just the men, your swim wave is likely to be pretty large, and you're going to be starting in probably a bigger group of people than you're used to starting with, because most of us are used to the rolling swim starts, and those are a little bit more relaxed, a little more calm. But you might have 300-400 people in your age group at this race starting at the exact same time as you, so it is going to be a very large group. So just be aware of that. 6:25 a.m. is the pro start, and then your swim waves are every 5 to 10 minutes by age group. It is an ocean swim. It is extremely salty. It is very buoyant. There's going to be probably some swell and chop. It's not usually that bad, but you never know what you're going to get, obviously, until you get out there. So just be aware that you're probably going to have at least a little bit of swell and a little bit of chop. You wait in the swim corrals until just before the wave in front of you goes off, and then you do a short swim to the start. So you're not starting like right off the beach. It's about 50 meters probably to the start area. It's a deep water start. It's not a lot of time, especially if you're in one of those age groups where there's only 5 minutes between you and the wave in front of you. You want to make sure that you're sort of towards the front of at least getting into the water, so you have plenty of time to swim to the start line before the cannon fires for your turn to go off. Because it is a very, it's kind of a short period of time, and if you're in a bigger wave, you might get kind of stuck towards the back, and you might not actually get to the start line before your wave goes off. So just pay attention to that. Again, there are no wetsuits allowed in this race unless you happen to be, I forget what the age cutoff is, but it's much older athletes, probably, I think it's 75 plus. But so a skin suit is recommended, but not necessary. If you just want to have this experience, it's not going to make a huge difference to your swim time if you do not have a swim skin. So don't overthink that. The sun is going to rise over the mountain on the shore. And the earlier waves may not have any issue with that, but later swim waves might have a little bit of glare when swimming back to the pier. So just be aware of that. As I mentioned before, the waves are going to be pretty big. And when I say waves, I mean your swim wave, the amount of people that you're starting with. It's going to be kind of chaotic. Make sure you seed yourself accordingly. I think sometimes if you have not raced in a world championship event, you're used to kind of being like, all right, I swim, 102. I'm usually kind of towards the front. Well, in an event like this, that's probably not going to be one of the faster swimmers in the race. So make sure that you are starting within the group where you should be, because there's a lot of people who are going to be very strong swimmers who are probably going to, be in front of you. Buoys are going to be to your right. Yellow buoys on the first half, orange buoys on the second half. Red buoys are the turn buoys at the end. There's only 2 turns in this race, so you always want to just be swimming in one direction for the most part. With a wave start, be aware that you are going to be at times overtaking slower swimmers from earlier waves or being passed by faster swimmers from later waves. I always say, like, take note of the swim caps of colors of the people in the wave directly ahead and directly behind you, because especially later in the race, it gets a little harder to tell people apart, because if it takes you a while to catch up to people, or if it takes a while for them to catch up to you, your swim speed is not going to be super different as opposed to if they catch you early. So you want to know when you're coming up to somebody who's going to be a slower swimmer than you, and see, like, all right, well, the dark blue guy went off 5 minutes or 10 minutes ahead of me. So I know if I caught him already, like, I definitely want to swim around him. Or if you see somebody in a green cap and you're like, all right, green started behind me, he's much faster than me. I don't try to follow him or whatever, just make sure that you take note of those swim caps. You exit at the beach. Up there's some stairs. There's going to be some people to help you at the start of the stairs to exit and go up into transition on the pier. And that's just an overhead shot of the swim course. This is back probably when there was a mass start, so it's not going to look quite that big, but it's not going to look a whole lot different either. So now your pacing, again, there's going to be faster swimmers than you're used to seeing for the most part. So make sure that you seed you're realistic in how you're seeding yourself within your group. First 200 to 300 meters, you want to do up tempo and then settle into tempo with a perceived exertion of 7 out of 10. If you're an anxious swimmer, start conservatively and build. There's no reason to go out of the gate at 100 miles an hour and then wind up having kind of issues with it. Take your time, build into it. It's a long day. You don't want to start in a bad spot. You're going to get hit, so expect it. Like I said, especially in this sort of start, there's going to be a lot of people, and you're probably going to get hit a few times. It's going to get better eventually. If that bothers you, there is room to stay wide left and have less contact. There's plenty of space in the ocean. There is, you can stay out of the chaos if that's an issue for you. Use the other swimmers to your benefit to draft and sight off of. Again, keep the course buoys to your right. You must keep the turn buoys to your right, but you do not have to keep the sighting buoys to your right. You can swim to the left of those. And again, the turns are going to be crowded, so stay wide. And then in the last 100 to 200 yards, kick and prepare your legs for running through transition. Now, all right, so this is going to be T1. T1, you are going to be moving through clockwise. Everybody has to run all the way to the end of the pier in both T1 and T2. So just kind of keep that in mind, regardless of where your bike is. Everybody comes out, you're going to go into the tent, and you're going to have to run all the way around. All right, now we have the bike course, which is probably one of the most famous parts of this whole thing. All right, it's one loop. It is 112 miles, and it's mostly good road conditions, 5,000 to 5,800 feet of climbing, depending on your watch or computer, broken up into some parts, the transition to the Queen K to Kauai High to Hawi, the descent out of Hawi, and then Kauai High Hill, and Queen K back to transition. All right, the first part of the course is transition to the Queen K. It's about 10 miles. And this part of the course, you really want to be careful. This is the most crowded because you're coming right at a transition. It has the worst pavement. It's the narrowest. There's the most turns. There's people going in both directions. There's the most people, there's the most crowds on both sides. So I always tell people, use this portion to settle in and bring your heart rate down and be extra careful. Take this part slow. There is no reason to take this out fast. It's just going to set you up for a better race if you're kind of taking this easy. And it tends to be so chaotic that you're just better off being a little bit more careful and, not trying to race your way out of the first 10 miles because there's just a lot going on. There's a lot of bad pavement. It is an out and back for the most part with a slight uphill on the way out and then a slight down on the way back. So you're going to be coming back a lot faster into town. And again, with people zooming in both directions, you just want to be really careful. And then there is a slight climb out of a shopping plaza up onto the Queen K. So that part's pretty short. And now the Queen K to Kauai High, slightly rolling hills and potential for wind, as there's going to be potential for wind everywhere. But this is where, if it's going to be a windy day, you're going to start to feel it for the most part. The pavement is decent, but you want to be careful. There is a rumble strip that lines the shoulder for most of the way on this. So if you're passing people or if you have to move out of the way for debris or anything like that, there is a big rumble strip. So it's nothing terrible if you do run over it, but something to definitely be aware of. Settle in and stay aero as much as you possibly can. Because like I said, it's not particularly hilly, so you can usually keep your aero position and keep a nice steady effort there. You may not feel too hot early on, especially if you're in an early swim wave, but stick to your fueling plan and drink early. Definitely don't want to fall behind right away. And then there's going to be a minor hill as you approach the left turn at the end of the Queen K. All right, the next section is Kauai High to Hawi, which is, again, probably one of the more famous rides. And if you get the opportunity, I would definitely recommend before the race going out there and riding that section. Just there's a gas station at the base of that hill where you can ride up to Hawi and turn around and come back. There's a fast downhill after the turn off the Queen K. And then there's a long, steady climb to Hawi, roughly miles 45 to 60. This can be very, very windy. If it's a windy day, this is probably going to be the windiest spot. We've been very lucky the last couple of years. We haven't had that wind, but you absolutely never know what it's going to be like up there. It can be a crosswind or a headwind, and the wind can shift. So if you're riding up and you think, okay, I have a headwind now, but when I turn around, I'm going to have a tailwind. Not necessarily the case. The wind kind of does whatever the wind feels like doing on this stretch of road. So just be prepared for that. So obviously be careful, especially if there's a crosswind. Like you really want to make sure that you're staying on the bars and just being aware of any wind gusts or anything like that. And then the personal needs for the bike is going to be just after the turnaround when you're coming back in the other direction. So just keep in mind that's past halfway. It's not a lot past halfway, but I think sometimes, if you have it in your head that something is going to be 56 miles, and even if it's only at 4 miles later, that can kind of bother you. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit past halfway. And then the descent from Hawi, there's a net elevation loss, but the wind may make it not feel that way. Like I said, I know last year we had virtually no wind, so it was very fast return, but I've had years that I rode up there where it was a crosswind or a headwind. So you're coming downhill, but you're pedaling to go 16, 17 miles an hour. Like you don't know what the wind is going to do up there. And I also wouldn't check any forecasts before the day and be like, oh, it says it's not going to be windy. Like the wind is going to do whatever it wants to do. Again, just because you had headwind on the way up does not mean you will get a tailwind on the way down. It's not a steep hill, but if there is not a strong headwind, you can pick up a lot of speed. So ride within your limits. That, like I said, that's the flip side of if there's not a headwind, it's a pretty fast descent. So just again, race within your limits and make sure that you're comfortable coming down at whatever speed you're coming down. And again, always be prepared for crosswinds no matter what. You never know when those are going to kind of show up. Don't forget to drink and eat, which is another thing. If you're flying down at 35 miles an hour, you might fall behind on that. You know, try to make sure you're paying attention to that. Stay aero if you can. Your bike is steadier with more even weight distribution. So with you and your aero bars. So sitting up, not always the best thing to do if you are feeling unsteady and there's a crosswind. The Kauai high climb, once you get to the bottom of the descent to Javi, you take a left and that's the last big hill before you're back on the Queen K. And it's really kind of the last big hill on the whole course. It's just a steady climb. It's not terrible, but again, it can be rough. You're getting late in the race and it can be windy. And then you take a right back onto the Queen K and you ride back to town. And again, this is just going to be rolling. There's likely going to be more wind than you had on the way out, no matter what time of day it was. And that's another thing I didn't mention about, you know, in terms of swim waves. Definitely the people who are in the earlier swim waves probably going to have a little bit of an advantage because the wind tends to pick up as the day goes along. So starting half hour, you know, 30, 40, some cases even 50 minutes earlier, going to make a difference. Most likely it is going to be hot, but there is the potential for some rain. I think some people look at it and think, you know, desert, Hawaii, hot. It's probably just going to be hot and sunny, but it absolutely can rain out there. And sometimes it does, which not always a bad thing. Obviously it can cool you off and it's not going to be as hot, but I would prepare for it to be hot and expect it to be hot. Use the aid stations just as much to cool you down as to keep hydrated. Like, you know, grab your sports drink or whatever you need from them, but also grab water and dump it on your back and down your shirt and on your neck and on your face, and whatever you can do to keep yourself cool is going to help. The bike course it actually crosses the run course. So if you are in a later wave, you may have to be careful of runners in the middle of the marathon. Race officials should keep you safe here. That part is always kind of a little bit of a shock. And you may find it too, if you're in an early wave and you're in the run, you may have people on the bikes that you have to pay attention to, but the race officials are pretty good about making sure that you're safe there. And then again, be careful on the short final descent back into transition. It's just kind of a little tight spot. So you kind of have to slam on the brakes there. And one thing I didn't mention either, I don't think in here, is I believe they're not going to have bike catchers for you. So you are going to have to rack your own bike. All right. So bike fueling, your aid stations are approximately every 7 to 12 miles. The first one's going to be at mile 15.2. The bottle exchange is going to have water, motor hydration, energy drink, and Coke. The Coke is going to be in some type of sports bottle that's going to fit in your bike cage. And then Morton gels, caffeinated and non-caffeinated, bars, bananas, and oranges. You know, consider how much of your own you want to carry. I know this year is the first year that they are using Mortal Hydration as their on-course nutrition as opposed to Gatorade Endurance. We have our little graphic there that kind of compares the two products. And, you know, if you have not had a chance to practice with that, I wouldn't just suddenly switch. It's certainly not a one-for-one swap. It's going to make a big difference. I know when I raced in Nice a couple weeks ago, it was the first time I'd ever used bike personal needs, because I've always just used Gatorade Endurance on course. But with the 0 calorie, you know, hardly any carbs drink, I definitely needed to supplement with my own. So, you know, make sure that you have your plan in place and know exactly what you're going to do. And then be heads up at the aid stations and make sure that you're not, you know, because there's people coming and going. Don't slam on the brakes in front of the volunteers. And then pay attention also to the new rule about no bottles down your kit shirt as an aero advantage. You know, you want to just keep your bottles on your bike frame. This is just kind of the Morton gels. That's what's going to be on course. So just kind of be prepared for what you need as compared to, you know, what these gels provide. Again, I personally do not use these gels, but if that's what you're going to be using, just make sure that you're getting what you need out of them and getting what you need for your fueling, your personal fueling needs. For the bike pacing, you want a U-shaped heart rate as able with the terrain. And the second half should be two to three beats higher than the first. The U-shape means you're going to start high because you're coming out of the water, and then you want your heart rate to kind of go down a little bit and settle in, and then build your effort as it goes along. So the heart rate's going to come up towards the second half. In Hawaii, your heart rate is likely to be 5 beats higher than it would in a typical Ironman with lower temperatures. So just be aware of that as well. Just the nature of racing in hot, humid conditions. Your power, even power on the flats and the gradual hills, and contain the power on the climbs. Try to flatten out the course as much as possible. Use your gears. Your cap should be about 50 watts over expected Ironman power. So if you go out thinking, all right, I'm going to ride 220 watts, you do not want to exceed 270 watts on any of the bigger hills. Don't overdo it when facing a headwind. Don't try to muscle through. You really want to stay on your target numbers no matter what. Treat headwind like it is a hill. Use your gears and keep your power targets. Your pace is going to be affected by the wind, climbing, and weather. So just be aware of that. And then again, rating perceived exertion 5 to 7 on a scale of 10. You want to take it easy. You want to feel like you can, because you got to run a marathon afterwards. All right, so your equipment you want for this race, tri-bike for sure. There's no reason to ride a road bike on this course. For your helmet, you may want to consider a standard helmet, especially if you're someone who has a high sweat rate or doesn't do well in hot conditions. You know, if you need some more vents and keep you cooler, whatever the benefit you get from keeping cooler is going to be much better than any benefit you'll get from the, you know, aero helmet. There's no need to change your gearings or your cranks or anything like that. So there's no steep hills on this course. There are no disc wheels allowed on this course. There's potential for crosswinds on the descent. So consider your front wheel depth. Just again, make sure that you're riding something that you feel comfortable with. If you can handle, you can handle a deeper rim rear wheel than front. So keep that in mind. And again, or on the side of comfort level. So whatever you're going to be comfortable with on race day. These are just kind of the drafting rules. I'm not going to go over these. We all kind of know most of these rules. So make sure you go over these in the guide. These are just kind of some of the new rules, the littering violation. And then again, stuff about fairings. And again, the bottles down the kit is not allowed. This is T2, and in this case, you're going to be going counterclockwise through T2. Again, you're not going to have a volunteer to grab your bike. You're going to have to rack your own bike, and then you go around the pier the opposite direction, going all the way to the end of the pier before you grab your stuff and head into the tent. Actually, one note about the bike before I move on to the run, in terms of sunblock, again, I know if you have an opportunity to apply more sunblock, do it. When I race there, I actually carry a spare little tube of sunblock in my bike jersey, and I put it on in the middle of the bike ride because it just gets that hot, and it just makes a difference in terms of getting sunburned. All right, so on the run course, it is kind of flat, one significant hill, mostly slightly rolling, about 1,000 feet of elevation gain over 26.2 miles. Starts with an out and back on Ali'i Drive, and then you run up Palani, and then you run out the Queen K down into the Energy Lab and back. It is sunny, usually. It is hot. It is humid. There's a little bit of a sea breeze early, and there is absolutely no shade on this course, unless you're running late enough that the sun has gone down. So the starting part, the most famous part, probably down Ali'i Drive. It's about 4 miles out and back, slightly rolling hills. It's definitely not totally flat. There's excellent crowd support here because everybody kind of hangs out there down, you know, near the finish and near the ocean. There's a little bit of a sea breeze because you are running a lot of it on the ocean. And then you have the run up Palani, which is about 7 miles in. It is long and relatively steep. There are lots of spectators on this stretch, which is kind of nice. And then once you get up there, you're going to go onto the Queen K and out to the Energy Lab. And it is more up than down on the way out. And it is very desolate. It's like everybody disappears when you get out there. And as mentioned on the bike and run courses cross each other. And then you're going to get out to the Energy Lab. This is a very hot, very long section. This is kind of where the mental fortitude is important because it feels extremely desolate. Everybody disappears. Your run personal needs are going to be beyond the halfway point of the run. So again, just be aware of that. So if you're looking for them at 13 miles, they're not going to be at 13 miles. They're going to be a little bit after that. And then the next part is going to be the Queen K back to the finish and slightly downhill on the way back to town, which is nice. And then back down Palani Hill, which is a nice downhill that feels a little bit rough at, mile 24, 25, but, and then you hit Alii Drive where you soak in the final quarter mile, famous stretch to the finish line. That is, that's what you've been looking for. All right. So race day, run, fueling. That's where all of your aid stations are going to be. The aid stations are every half mile to about 1.5 miles. Keep in mind, some of these aid stations are going to feel kind of far apart. They have in the last couple years post-COVID, they cut back a couple of them. There used to be more aid stations. And you would think that 24 aid stations is enough. It's not quite enough. It's a couple of the stretches, even 1.3, 1.4 miles between a couple of the aid stations is going to feel very long, especially when it's 85 degrees and you're, and 5, 6, 7 hours into an Ironman. So, just keep that in mind, which means, you might want to consider carrying your own fuel or at least carrying a couple bottles to make sure that when you get to those points where you're like, man, it's still a quarter mile, a third of a mile, half mile to the next aid station, and I need more fluid. You really might want to consider carrying your own. Again, at the aid stations, they're going to have water, they're going to have Mortal Hydration, Morton gels, caffeinated and non-caffeinated, the bars, cola, chips, pretzels, bananas, oranges, broth, ice sponges, all kinds of stuff. Don't forget salt. Obviously, that's hugely important. And again, because they have made this switch to Mortal Hydration, really pay attention to the fueling, reevaluate what you've done in the past. Because if you're used to drinking Gatorade, you are not going to get what you need out of that Mortal. It's got salt, but it has no carbs. So you may need to supplement with more gels or, again, potentially carry your own sports drink or whatever you do to kind of make up for what you're not getting there. The run pacing, again, it's going to be your bike heart rate plus 5 or 10 beats. If you can't stimulate your heart rate more than that, you probably biked too fast. And then again, your heart rate's going to be 5 to 10 beats higher than it is during a typical Ironman race because of the heat and humidity. If you're going to be running with run power, you want to again stay as even as possible over the terrain within reason. Second half close to the first as possible. Then walk the steep sections if you need. Again, there's only a couple steep sections, but sometimes it's better off to kind of walk up, especially like Palani is so early in the run. It's maybe better to walk up that than muscle up and try to and already kind of be digging yourself into a hole when you're not even 10 miles into the marathon. Stay relaxed early. It's really easy to overcook those first miles that are flatter and there's lots of spectators. So there's a lot of excitement there and you want to run fast, but really reel it in and, try to keep things at a reasonable, comfortable, relaxed pace. Settle into a nice groove on Alii Drive. Don't chase pace on the hills. Again, you don't want to be trying to run up Palani and set any records early in the marathon. Just stick to power and heart rate. Again, rating perceived exertion on 5 to 7 on a scale of 10. Use the aid stations again to keep yourself cool. Use ice, water, sponges, whatever they have. There's probably going to be people with hoses. Take advantage of anything that there is out there to keep yourself cool. race day, your mental fitness, you want to focus on your goals as your number one priority. The items you have 100% control over, which are, again, your attitude and your fueling plan. Like you can't control the weather, you can't control how other athletes are going to be, but you can control your attitude and your fueling. Second, focus on your targets, power, pace, and heart rate. You have some control over these, but sometimes your body's not going to 100% cooperate there. But, these are still really important to focus on as much as you can. Stick to the plan, including how you react when something doesn't go according to plan, which, again, when we discussed preparing for the race in the final couple of weeks, think about how you're going to react if something doesn't quite go right and how you're going to adapt and deal with that. The outcomes should be left to the second half of the run, if at all, like place, time, whatever it is. You don't want to be thinking about those early, because if you think about those too early, you might wind up blowing your race. Be who you are. Don't try to be anybody else. Don't try to race anybody else's race or think about what anybody else is doing. Especially a lot of people, I think there's probably a handful of people who have been waiting literally 5 years to race here after qualifying quite possibly in 2019 because of all the, COVID and deferrals and all this stuff. Don't, just be grateful for this opportunity and, be smart. Don't think about anybody but you. Show appreciation for the supporters and the volunteers and your family and friends, everybody who's there helping you on the day. Like, it takes literally thousands of people to make this race happen on race day. So be grateful for all of that. All right, you've got your time cutoffs, which are pretty standard compared to other races, 17 hours from the time your race starts, not the time that the last wave or the first wave starts. It's from the time your race starts, whenever that is. 2 hours and 20 minutes from the last swim wave. T1, you got 10 minutes after the swim closes. Bike 10.5 hours after the last swim wave. And then the T2, 10 minutes after that, and the run 17 hours. Race day for spectators, make sure they download the Ironman athlete tracking app. That's going to be the best way for them to follow you along. There's also going to be online videos streaming that they can watch, but that's more for the pro race. But if they want to watch you, the tracking app it's getting better all the time, so it can usually kind of predict where you're going to be. If they want to watch you on the swim, then if they get there early, they can sit along the seawall and see all kinds. It's a great spot. You just have to get there nice and early. On the bike, it's what they call the hot corner. There's kind of you come and go a couple of different times before you head out onto the Queen K and disappear for 4.5, 5, 6+ hours. So they can see you pretty easily there. And then on the run, coming out of transition, and then they'll see you twice along Elite Drive before you head out on the Queen K. So it's nice. You can see people a few times before they disappear. And then post race, you are going to have your dry clothes bags and your finisher items. It's different here. You kind of have to go to a table and they cross your name off a list and give you your medal, your shirt. They may also give you a finisher coin. I think they've done that in the past sometimes. A towel. They're going to give you a bunch of stuff. And then you can go, there's going to be a food section. It's quite a walk from the finish line. It's a little bit rough, but it's going to be past all your finisher gear stuff. And then your gear checkout is going to be sometime around 7 p.m. to midnight. It might be a later start. I know in the past, sometimes they're not quite ready. So I wouldn't try to be the first person to get your gear, because it just becomes waiting around and standing in the line unnecessarily. Go take a shower, go get cleaned up, go do what you need to do and come back and get your gear later. You must have your wristband or your ticket. Don't take that wristband off until Monday after the race, if even that soon. That's the soonest you want to take it off, because there's a few things that you want to make sure you still have that on for. And then obviously come back out and cheer if you can. Watching the later finishers is a pretty cool experience to see people coming in later. And then again, awards, if you are getting one or if you just want to see them, or again, it's just a celebration of having done the race. There is a dinner at the King Kamehameha Beach Hotel. at 6 p.m. on Sunday night. And then you want to support the local community while you are there, and then consider the local shops and restaurants. Be courteous, tip well. Everybody there works really hard, and on race week it gets a little bit crazy for them. So, just be really courteous and be nice to everybody. They're doing the best they can, and then make someone's day better anytime you can, and explore. It's a really cool island. There's a lot of really awesome stuff there. Get out and see a lot of it if you can. Again, feasibly within reason. You don't want to wreck yourself before the race, but if you can stay a little later after the race, that's definitely very cool too. And then, yeah, I guess that's kind of the gist. You can follow us at QT2Systems.com, our Facebook and Instagram, and our YouTube page. And if you have any other questions or anything you want to know from me, I would be happy to answer them. That's my email. I've raced this race 6 times at this point. I've also been there as a spectator 5 times. I know the course very well. I've ridden the whole thing many times. I've run the marathon quite a few times. I've swum the course dozens of times. It's a really cool venue, and it's a very exciting race. And again, be grateful that you qualified. The hard part is qualifying. This is just your reward for having qualified. So have fun with it.
All right, thanks so much, Molly. For anyone who is on live, if you do have a question, you're welcome to come off mute or put it in, put the question in the chat box. All right, Molly, looks like we have no questions now, but definitely encourage anyone to reach out to Molly, or this recording, as you're watching it, will be up on the YouTube station and the QT2 Systems YouTube station, and you can always ask questions within YouTube, and we'll make sure that we get the answers to you. So thanks for everyone for joining us live and for watching later. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you.